It's Monday, the 22nd of November, 2021. Welcome to the Seaside's podcast match reaction show. Tonight we will be going over what we've just watched at the Liberty Stadium, which was Blackpool, Swansea 1, Blackpool 1, and I'm John Aspinall. This is Seaside's podcast match reaction show. I've just repeated myself, Swansea 1, Blackpool 1, and also some West Brom preview.
Ollie's already changed the world. A small town from the north of England with a great tradition.
Now, I was only up at 6 a.m. this morning, and I wasn't clearing up sick in the early hours, hence the disastrous intro that I've just winged and failed miserably with, but hopefully you all got the gist. Welcome to the Seaside's podcast match reaction show on a Monday evening. Monday, Tim, because, and unmute yourself before you come in. Monday, because we've had a planes, trains and automobiles trip to what I was calling the Liberty Stadium, but I got corrected to the Swansea.com or something like that stadium. A fully electrified journey down there, wasn't it?
It was, and I've only just realised it wasn't Liberty Stadium because all the signs when you approach the stadium still say Liberty. Yeah, and
they're taking liberties with those signs, aren't they? Taking liberties.
You stole my thunder with the planes, trains, and automobiles. And I was actually going to let you off after our overland trip through deepest, darkest Wales. I was going to let you off for the fact that you didn't manage to get a brace of good intros. But yeah, we'll no doubt talk about our experience as the night goes on. But me listening to Greta Thunberg as brings with it complications, doesn't it?
It certainly does. So me thinking that Tim's this extremely well organised person, profession in our midst. Some people said, "Oh, do you think you'll run out of juice?" He's going, "No, it'll be fine." He's got it all plotted out in his sat nav. Didn't you, Tim, with these fast-acting chargers? And we're going past this McDonald's where we were apparently stopping. And my son, who's with us, Eddie, goes, "That's the McDonald's where we're supposed to be stopping." And Tim goes, No, it's not that one. No. It's in 15 miles time. We go. Pray tell, Timothy, Andrew, pray tell.
Pray tell indeed. So I learned a salutary lesson in planning, which is make sure the charge you want to go to, you actually plot into your sat nav and don't rely on your judgment call as to how far south of Wrexham you've actually gone. So the next true to form, the next Mackies we pull in has no charges, and then we select a fantastic one in this spa town in the land that time forgot, only for the bloody thing not to work or most certainly cause us that many problems we gave up. So we then go and find another one which we think great. We go for a brew and we find out it's the slowest charger known to man.
And the first one didn't work as well, did it?
And the first one on that one didn't work. So it was a slightly better experience on the way back, but we still had to make a call to get it on, didn't we? So
it was very, very convoluted. So we eventually got to where we were staying, that Premier Inn on the northern outskirts of the city. Phone the first cab firm. Can you take us to the Liberty Stadium? No, sorry, mate. Next firm. Takes us to the Liberty Stadium. No, nothing in the area. And so on and so forth. And we called 10 companies, didn't we?
Yeah.
We're like, for fuck's sake, how are we going to get there now? So we were there a lot later than we should have been. And Tim, you were saying, we're going to have to walk. And I said, I'm not walking 3 miles.
And I'm not getting in my car that's got 3% battery on it to drive us closer to the stadium. So to be fair, I called it quite early, I think. I said, look, we ain't going to get there. If we don't start walking now, we're not going to get there. And we got there about 2:45, didn't we? So
sweating, power walked, sweat dripping off me. I was half pissed. You know that horrible feeling when you're half pissed, and then someone says to you, "You've got to walk 2.5 miles to a football stadium and march there." It's not the news you want to hear, is it? After a 6-hour journey,
certainly. Well, you needed to stretch your legs after all that sitting down, anyway, didn't you? So it's interesting.
got
It's
there in the end,
interesting,
didn't we?
isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, we got there in the end. Sean, Mitch, how was your weekends in the run up to the game? You get up to much? Don't think either of you went, did you? Just caught it on the close match. You didn't go, did you, Sean?
No, I didn't go. No, just watched it at home.
No, I'm
Pretty,
not allowed.
pretty
out
quiet
of the
one, I
house.
think. Yeah, really, just one of them, wasn't it? It was just kind of one of them games where everyone's kind of bottled going because of how long and far away it is and how much of a trek it is to get there. So it's just a quiet one for me, really.
As Let's Walk and Talk says, why not walk 3 miles, soft lad? Because I was
We
half
did.
pissed. I was
We
half
did.
pissed. That was right. Yeah, we did.
And he did. Back via 2 stops back to the bushes for John to for a call of nature.
To relieve myself, yeah. Anyway, no, we got there in the end, Tim, didn't we? So all's well, ends well. And the main topic of conversation on the journey to the stadium was this, which was the match day 11. Bit of a head scratcher. Dan Grimshaw, Gabriel, Sterling, Ekpateta, Husband, James, Wintle, Connolly, Mitchell, Anderson, and Yates. So, Sean, I'm going to come to you first with this. It was way off what you picked on the preview show, and quite a surprise to see Callum Connolly starting.
Yeah, it was one of those. I think I don't think I expected him to use a back three because I feel like he would have used it earlier on in the season if he was ever going to, because there were other teams where we potentially could have matched them up in a back three and we hadn't done it. But obviously, we played the 3-4-2-1. We were similarly kind of all second guessing what the actual players would be. As I'm sure we'll come on to later on, me and Mitch were kind of having the long debate during the game of where this system, what the weaknesses are of it. And I don't think necessarily the system was wrong. The system limited Swansea to next to no chances apart from the goal that they scored. The system itself worked well in terms of what he was wanting to do. Off the ball, we were absolutely superb, as we'll obviously come on to. So I think it worked well, to be honest, this system. I think it was the right system to use in the end because of limiting Swansea. I mean, they've got so many good ball players in central midfield, as they showed in the early stages. But it's whether going forward we have the players on the ball to be able to hurt teams playing this system, because you've got to kind of be brave on the ball in tight areas. And as we'll come on to, I think Connolly in particular just isn't a player that you're going to be able to rely on to do that sort of thing in central midfield. And I think that's where we were lacking perhaps. But I think generally I was quite happy with it, to be honest.
Mitch, what was your thoughts when you saw the team come out of the bag, as it were, and what was your thoughts on how he was going to set this team up? Because we were really struggling to slot players into positions.
Well, my head melted because it just looked like he'd picked all of the defenders. It looked like he'd sort of gone around the dressing room going, are you a defender? Yep, well, you can play. Are you a defender? Yep, I am. You can play. I must admit, I did wonder whether, having just signed the 5-year contract, he felt like he had to pull a masterclass out of the bag, you know? He felt like he had to pull something out of the bag that nobody else would have thought of just to justify whatever signing on bonus he got. I mean, when I saw it, I think probably I worked it out basically as it turned out. And I've got to be honest, I didn't really like it that much because it seemed a side set up to contain as opposed to a side set up to go and take on the opponent. I think we've established over the months that I've done this that I'm very much Kevin Keegan in my mentality. You know, I'd always like to go and take the opposition on. But, you know, like Sean said, it did the job that it was supposed to do. And I'm probably far naiver than Critch in terms of, you know, I'd whack Gaz up front, have as many attacking players as I can fit in the team and go at the other team no matter who they were. And we probably wouldn't be 10th in the championship under my management. So,
Tim, I think that's something we have discussed on the pod recently, that Critch seems to have changed his mindset to, we are playing our game from now on and we're not going to kind of react to the Swansea teams. We were saying that, but he's dragged
I thought
us
he'd had his epiphany in that he was now going to approach the game. I think I said the same thing to Mitch in the last pod, didn't I? I was like saying, "Do you think he's changed?" Yeah, we spoke all about it, and then he's gone back to matching up, and I personally, I don't think it does any favors. And this is a bit. It's like the post international break headache hangover. So I should have probably said for us, isn't it? That because Dougal's flying all over the world to go get his bum numb on the bench. He then comes back and Keshi doesn't think he can start him in the next game. So we effectively lose him for double the games. Well, not double the games because the games are cancelled, aren't they? But we lose him for a game when he comes back every time because he doesn't want to start him. And I think if we'd started with our normal two midfield, we'd have looked a lot more solid. I think, listen, I think Connolly's got a place in the team, but it's not playing in a defensive midfield role. And I think we look weaker. We haven't got Stewart because Stewart's got glass ankles. And as a result, we rely on those two in the middle. And when we lose one of them, it's a big problem because we haven't got anybody really to replace them. And I think we've got to look at that in January, I think, because at the moment, if Dougal is going to carry on doing what he's doing and traveling the world, and he's always not going to miss the next game. I'd have played him. I'd have played him come what may because he's had a good crash out, and no doubt he flew out first class. And if you ever seen those planes, the seats they give to first class passengers, they basically sleep the whole 24 hours. So I'm pretty sure he could have played.
Yeah, I was going to say with Dougal because I'm similar to you. I would have definitely started. And I think that, I watched Martin Boyle score a hat-trick for Hibs on Sunday, and he played both games for Australia. So it wasn't like Dougal's hardly played a minute for Australia, and he's come straight back, gone to Scotland, played the whole game. So I can't see how Dougal wouldn't be able to do similar for ourselves. And also, I think with Connolly, the point that you're making there, I think that the difference is that I think Connolly could play as a defensive midfielder in a midfield three. So we've got two more advanced central midfielders in front of him, because then the onus isn't on him to play the threaded ball forward. He can just sort of win the ball back, play the simple pass into the other two midfielders. But the minute we put the onus on Connolly to be almost a playmaker in there, he's limited in that regard. So yeah, I agree on both points really. It's like I say, it's just one of those, isn't it? I don't think he will play Dougal from now on. It'll be a similar theme.
The other thing in terms of Critch's mentality, it must have come into his thinking that we got 6 points off Russell Martin last year against NK Dons, and both of those games he set up really to spoil the opponent. They were both really dire games to watch. The home one in particular, the away one was a bit of a sort of a more justifiable performance, I think, because we were away. But I'd be surprised in both of those games if there were, I don't know, 5 shots on goal between the two teams, and yet we walked away with 6 points there. So I wonder if he was kind of hoping to repeat the feat from last year in terms of how he took on Russell Martin.
That's a great shout, Sean. You've been our resident stats man. One stat I did find out after the game was Swansea have only conceded 1 goal at home prior to this game. It's a hell of a record, isn't it? And maybe that's coming to Critchley's thinking in the planning of this game.
Yeah, well, they're harping back to the previous times with Rodgers and Martinez and games like that, where they really control the ball at home, dictate the tempo, and we kind of allowed them to do that to some extent because we trusted ourselves that when the ball came to the final third, it wasn't necessarily something that was going to get past us. But I think early doors you saw with Ncham in particular, his range of passing was superb, and a couple of times quite early on, he threaded really good balls through. And I just think that if we hadn't have set up the way we set up, you look at how we stemmed Ethan Laird on the right-hand side. He's a massive threat for them on the right-hand side. He's probably one of, if not their best players. And you look at how the gaps almost on the field that they could have quite easily picked apart if we had a defensive player less in that lineup. I think potentially we would have been picked apart in the first half, just simply because we were quite loose and slack in possession. So ultimately, because of how it's not just the fact they control possession, but they have players that can thread a really good ball through and break the lines. And I think that, to be honest, looking back at the game, because I watched it again today, we were probably smarter in going a bit more defensive and a bit more cautious. But we didn't help ourselves in the first half because of how slack we were in possession.
Tim, in Critch we trust was the mantra we were repeating to ourselves over and over again when we saw the team line up and we were walking up there. In Critch we trust, in Critch we trust, in Critch we trust. trying to justify to him what that team lineup was going to do. But let's just talk about Neil Critchley and the new contract that we've offered to him, a lengthy contract, and it's great news just to have him signed up on an extended deal. And I think it's a real statement from the club, isn't it? And a statement of intent.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to the discussions we had on previous pods, in that, you know, he's got a project here, and I think it's also a statement of intent from him that hopefully he wants to see this project through, and there'll be nothing better on his CV if he does that, because there's too many managers just jump ship at the first opportunity, and you know, they get a lot of these supposedly bigger clubs, a car crash is waiting to happen. And I think it's often been a big mistake. You know, you've seen managers like Nathan Jones, you know, move from where he's doing a very, very good job and where he could build a reputation, and it's not worked. And I think Critchley's got to look at what he's got here and what are the opportunities are here and the backing he's going to get here, and then think more medium to long term rather than short to medium. And I think there's too many managers think short to medium, and some of that will be financial for obvious reasons, because you know, a move even to a supposedly big championship club can involve mind-blowing amounts of money. You know, we've seen Solskjaer, haven't we, today? They're talking about £7.5 million payoff, and you know, managers like Allardyce and Bruce just seem to pick up paycheck after paycheck after paycheck when they get booted out after 12 months. So, you know, you don't necessarily, you know, you look at these managers and you don't necessarily think that, you know, that if they're looking after their family and looking after their finances, then they will do that. But if you're looking at the bigger picture and actually want to leave may I even say legacy in the game, then I think you need to, you know, Klopp did it. Klopp stayed at Mainz for quite a long time. I think it was 6-7 years, if I remember rightly, if not a little bit longer. And I think Critchley might look at what he's done, because Mainz were quite an unfashionable club. He turned them into an established Bundesliga side. And I think Critchley could do something similar with the right backing, with the right backroom staff, with the right momentum on and off the pitch. And yeah, let's hope he intends to honour that contract or get close to honouring that contract. But the one thing he's going to do is put off, you know, the vultures who might be circulating when they, you know, they feel that they're not quite performing as they should do, and look at the bright young manager at Blackpool who's perhaps overachieving when you look at the resources he's got available.
Well, it'll put off those sort of clubs that it really pisses off if he went to. You know, if it'll mean that if and when he does go, he'll need, you know, a 5-year contract. The compensation will be such that it'll need to be a big club to come in and pay that compensation, and then, you know, hopefully that'll be in a while, and hopefully if he does go, it'll be to a club where we think, well, you can't really begrudge him that. I think the worst thing in the world would be if he went to, I don't know, maybe it wouldn't be Derby, right, would he? But yeah, you know, just somebody where you just go, okay, it's just us, but a few places higher, and that would be really dispiriting. I think that's put that to bed for a long time.
I was going to say, I think the one that you mentioned him. So yeah, you mentioned him there, Brighton. I think that's the one I think will be the test, because I think that they're essentially a supercharged version of ourselves. They've got a long-term project. Critchley wants a project. He wants a sustainable project that he can work and build on. And you look at, obviously, Graham Potter's gone from Swansea. I would potentially think that they may even prefer Russell Martin to Critchley. I think that Russell Martin plays the more attractive brand of football, if you want to say that. But I think that what makes Critchley better than anyone else in the division is adaptability, that he's able to do multiple different styles of football at times, but he has a simple philosophy alongside that. But I think Brighton will be the one that I'd be worried about if Potter went. But as you say, apart from that, generally I don't see many clubs that he would leave for. It just puts us in a sound position, and it shows the progression planning that's in place at the club at the moment. And yet there was an interview recently with the MK Dons sporting director, and I imagine we're on a similar footing where they're consistently year upon year putting a short list together of potential managers that will be the next person to take over in their project, and they're constantly progression planning. So even if Critchley goes, I know obviously, hopefully it'll be in a few years' time. I wouldn't be naive enough to think that he'll be here till 2026 if we're not a Premier League club by then. But I think that it wouldn't be as big as a disaster as what I think people make it. I just trust that we've got the infrastructure slowly building now where we will be in a place where eventually in about 10 years' time, the club will want it. The head coach is essentially an interchangeable every 3 years or so. And that we're already planning in place to keep a similar type, or we've got a similar portfolio of managers in the background that we're looking at.
Well, I'll just add to that I am actually in the process of doing my level 1 FA football coaching qualification at the moment. So, you know, with Simon, if you ever need me,
John,
I'm here.
I think you're going to have to get behind me because Ben Mansford was very taken by my tactics of bang it at Big Gaz and pick all the attackers. I could hear the scribbling in the boardroom there, thinking,
John, the first thing you've got to learn when you go to coach's school is how to tuck your tracky bottoms, get your socks over the top. That's the first thing you've got to learn. When you've mastered that, then you look like a coach. Then you can move on and start.
Yeah, I kind of see myself as one of the more these kind of Italian stylish ones with
get your Marnie
suit jacket, jumper on top of a shirt and tie, that kind of thing. You know, looking sharp and dapper.
Leave the coach into your assistants.
You have to learn that windmill hand gesture like that. And nobody knows what it means, but they all do it, just like they're a combine harvester or something.
Rocking up down to Cotton Hall for the under-9s, fully suited and booted. Who dares me to do it? Who dares me?
I've got to be there. I've got to be there for that one. Did you see that picture I put on the where somebody had done Allardyce as there's something like a reinventing him as an Italian manager for the United job? That was quality.
With like fake glasses and a fake moustache drawn in. I don't know. The size at the party. Yeah. Quality. Okay, back to the game. Let's start with you, Tim. I know we were all a bit kind of rushed getting in there. How do you think we started this game? And for me, I was still a bit kind of stressed that we actually got in there and got ready to take in the first quarter of an hour. I don't know if it felt for you because I was finding it hard to concentrate on the action.
It was a bit of a strange one all the way around. But you know, no one of us liked to have the team kick towards you in the first half. So that was like the first sort of negative note, and obviously there wasn't, you know. And listen, having done the journey, and I've been before, but having done the journey, you can see why. I think there was about 400 or 500 there, wasn't there? So I think it was all a little bit muted in the stands.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. The atmosphere wasn't as raucous as it.
But we've had double virtually every game, haven't we? And listen, those that were there made a reasonable amount of noise, but it was more muted than you normally get because there was obviously less numbers, and I think probably a lot of the young lads. Although there's a few of them there, but I think where those young lads travel everywhere. I think that was probably just 100 mile too far for a lot of people, or even 50 mile too far, and it was a dog of a journey, really, wasn't it? So, so my immediate thoughts were we looked a little bit subject. I hear what Sean says, but I just didn't feel that everybody quite knew where they were meant to be. I felt from the off, I thought that Gabriel was too far forward. I always think he looks better when he's coming from further deep because he's not picked up. Where he's playing slightly further forward, he is picked up. And I felt there was a bit of that going on all over the pitch. Obviously, we've spoken about Connolly before, and I just felt we looked a little bit disjointed, but without looking bad. I think when we're in possession, we probably didn't do as I think we probably lacked a little bit of creativity, and so didn't probably go and hurt them as much as we could. But I haven't had a chance to watch the game back. I accept what Sean says, that probably what we did do was negate a very, very good football inside. So I found the game a little bit insipid, to be honest. From the point of view that I think we've been so good to watch in in recent weeks, home and away. Even when we lost at Forest, I thought we played quite good football. That I don't think we quite hit the heights that we've hit in recent games. And again, that's probably a reflection of the fact that we've got Dougal missing. We decided not to go with Medine. I think, Jerry continues to look out of sorts and seems to stray offside far too much. I just look all around the pitch. I just didn't think we quite had that swagger that we've had in recent weeks.
Mitch, from your recollection of the game, how do you think we started? There was obviously, as Tim said, we didn't fire out the blocks like we normally do, but on the same token, we didn't look at threat, did we? Bar a couple of minor half penalty shouts.
No, and I don't think those penalty shouts, those early ones, were penalties. I watched them both back a couple of times. I don't think they were penalties. I think we looked like I think we looked like the shape was okay defensively, but we just. Sean said that, Swansea, a good team at playing through the lines. We looked like we had no chance of playing through their lines. And I felt like, although the possession wasn't ridiculously uneven, it felt like we got it and sort of wandered up to halfway line, lost the ball, and then sat back in again. Whereas they got it and kind of actually set up an attack on us. I thought the first,
passed it around. If you look at that stat there, Mitch, accurate passes per match 500, average possession 64. So the flying high. Swansea and the ball retention.
They touched the ball a lot. I mean, they touched the ball a lot more than us. They physically made more passes than us, and but they didn't really scare me at the same time. I wasn't really watching it through my fingers. I've got to be honest. It was. I don't get the Russell Martin thing. People keep saying, "Oh, he's a good manager. He plays attractive football." I don't have Sky, so I don't watch a lot of Championship football outside of us. And the 3 games I've seen Russell Martin manage have all been bloody dreadful. And I don't know if it's just Critchley versus Russell Martin. If the two styles, the two possession-based styles, the two sort of managers that worship possession and set the teams up really well, just nullifies each other. But it was turgid to watch. There was just nothing happened in particular at all. I agree totally with Steve. I thought Swansea were boring to watch. I thought MK Dons are really boring to watch. Maybe they're a really sexy football team against teams that let them be. I don't know.
That's essentially it. I think if Swansea are crap to watch, then we're playing well. That's how I judge us against the Russell Martin side, because as we like to kind of hit home, is I don't think any team sets up as well as us off the ball in the division. And I think it shows against a team like that, because those are exactly the type of teams. We said in the preview show that Swansea are exactly the sort of team that Neil Critchley will like to play off the ball, because they play the way that we want them to. Centre halves building out from the back, will press up high. It stops them being able to play through the thirds because we're pressing them so aggressively. But in the opening stages, I don't particularly think we were that aggressive. I think that the difference for me was that we missed a player, the outball in the central midfield area. I know you spoke about Gabriel before and how he was sort of out of the game and you like him to be further back. I think obviously we'd systematically put him and James a bit higher up to push their wing backs back to stop them coming forward. And I think that if you had a central midfielder in there that was brave enough to take the ball on the turn, then bring the ball forward, then you've got the two wing backs being released either side of the defenders. But because we didn't have that, the ball was always coming out to Gabriel or James when they were marked by a wing back. So we were never able to progress the ball forward the way we were wanting to. And that's obviously, as we'll come on to later when we're speaking to Mitch, we're just missing that player in the midfield that links that together off the ball when we're against an aggressive team like that. And that's where then you need your target man up top that's going to just be able to get us up the field. It's not sustainable long term, but at the end of the day, you need to be doing that sort of thing just simply to get you up the field if you've not got a player in midfield that will link the play together to build it up.
It sounds like to me like he's converted.
It's
working. Which player are you talking about there,
Shane Lavery.
It's working, Mitch. It's like Chinese water torture, isn't it? Just drip away. Keep slowly chipping away at him. He'll crack. Little cracks are appearing.
The thing is, John, if you just tell the truth enough times, it'll eventually seep into people's minds.
So, Tim, let's come to you. The penalty incident where Reece James, it was obviously down the other end. So the appeals in the ground weren't particularly vociferous, were they? Were you worried? When he went down?
Not on the which one. I can't remember which shoulder it was now. There was one that I did think was a penalty, which was, I think, and it was down that end. That was the second. Was that the second one?
There was one for handball.
It was Marvin, first of all. Marvin made a challenge as they ran through, which was kind of more of a body check. And then James was wider of the goal. He was on their right as he went through, and he sort of stuck his foot to try and poke the ball away. He didn't make the ball, but he didn't really make contact with their player either. And then the third one, I mean, there might have been a fourth one that was a handball, but the third one I remember was the Husband one, where Marvin went in for the challenge, and then Husband sort of had a second dig when that.
It was the Husband, and MB said it in there. It was the Husband one that I felt was the pen.
Yeah,
it was a very Husband-esque challenge, wasn't it?
I think, and there was almost like it felt a little bit like the reverse of QPR, where their fans were going apoplectic, weren't they? At the referees shout, doing the chant of "You're not fit to referee," and it felt very much like we were chuckling, weren't we? Thinking, been there and bought the T-shirt on that one, and but equally, I think the first two, and I had forgotten there was a fourth, because the third one I was thinking was in the second half, and there's one that was, in my view, and I was quite astounded that it wasn't given, particularly bearing in mind the fact that obviously most refs tend to sort of go a little bit with the home side. I think maybe if it was really weird, because their sort of vociferous fans were sort of to our left down the side, where I think if they'd had like a North style home end, I think they might have got a little bit more traction on that one. I think because it did really look like a penalty to me.
Getting a bit ahead of ourselves with that third one, so let's just rewind to the goal from. I always think of Pirlo when I hear his name. Joel Pirro. Sean, he's apparently he's a left footer, and he's curled down in from the at least 25 yards out, right to the top corner. Grimshaw's got absolutely no chance. Great goal. Connolly perhaps at fault for not getting tight enough to him.
Yeah, I think at first viewing, I was just like, oh, well, that's a really good goal. Kind of, we've stood off. But I think what made it look bad for Connolly was that he initially stood off, and I was like, fair enough. If this goes in, great. Like, you can do there, really. But it's the way he kind of shifts to almost invite him inside. It was straight. His body shape was really strange for where he was positioned on the pitch. And he'd almost invited him to take the shot at that point, and he's gone and done it. And I mean, Perot scored a couple of goals from outside the area already this season. He's just kind of known for that at this point. And yeah, I think Connolly should have done better. But I think at the same time, I don't think it was a horrendous mistake. I just think his body language was a bit off in terms of his shape. But he did the right thing, I think, to back off, because you should, like at the end of it, it's 25 yards out. You've got to come to a point where you invite the shot, because if you're just pressing out all the time, say Connolly and Husband had pressed out to block that shot, then they would have just fed the ball in behind to Ethan Laird, who was rounding the corner. You'll always find a better option, a better angle to goal. So, yeah, I think he should have done better, but I don't think he necessarily should have come charging out to tackle the player.
Do you think on Squires Gate in the next few days, bearing in mind the last two goals we've conceded, that we might do a little bit of shape work on how to defend from 30 yards out, because we've been done by two of those now, haven't we? With 2 games on the trot.
I think
sorry, mate. Just very quickly. Yeah, Tim and I were we were laughing having a chuckle to ourselves. Was it listening to the Swansea guy like just going on about the press all the time? How you may laugh at this, Sean. We were saying, I said, Tim, it's all they talk about these days, isn't it? The press. Isn't it just closing down? So Mitch, we should have just closed him down, basically, shouldn't we?
Yeah, quite. I mean, that's music to my ears. Yeah, I was going to say, I think the other thing that, and this is harsh, but Connolly was there in that midfield to defend. That when you look at what Connolly produced going forward, it was quite limited, and which is not really his fault because he's he isn't really a central midfielder. But I looked at the way he distributed the ball, and I'd said to Sean in the group chat that he felt like he was kind of knocking League One percentage balls into the corner whilst everybody else was trying to play a different style of football. And I don't really blame him for that because I'm not expecting him to come in and start pinging it like Pirlo. But it was particularly disappointing that he was the one that got done for the goal because he was the one that was there to, if anybody was going to make a challenge, close somebody down, disrupt play, then that's what Connolly was there for. Maybe I'm being harsh.
I actually said to Tim at half time, Mitch, I said he's a League One player, really, Connolly.
A League One leggy
midfielder.
Oh, what a time! That's caused controversy. Sean, go on, Sean.
I think this is the thing because I think we forget that Connolly defensively was actually incredibly sound at right back at the start of the season. He did a great job for us there when it wasn't his natural position, and I think particularly at Bournemouth was a highlight of that, of how defensively sound he is. But on the ball, it's where it comes to. This is where the Championship, every player on the pitch has to be good on the ball under pressure. And that's what I used to slate Turton for at right back last season, because he would always just play those percentage balls, like Matt was saying, down the line. He was one-dimensional in that regard. He wasn't brave enough to take the ball on and play a better pass or a ball into midfield, take the ball on, take it on the turn. And it's similar with Connolly in that position. And if you're not able to be brave enough on the ball, particularly the way we want to play longer term, then you're not necessarily going to be good enough to start every week. But I do think that Connolly, I struggle to judge him. I think his best position would be right centre half in a back three. That's where he played his best football at Fleetwood. That's where he's played his best football throughout his career. And until he plays a run of games there, which I don't necessarily think he'll get, I find it hard to judge him because I think he's kind of just being thrown in here, there and everywhere and expected to put in a 7, 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
Right, Mitch, what were you going to say?
Well, on top of Shaw, I was going to be controversial and say, actually, I'm jumping ahead, but I don't think, actually, of that back five, I don't think Dujon Sterling was the strongest member of that back five. And I would have been interested to see Connolly in that position. I don't think Dujon took to that right of the back three anywhere near as well as he took to playing right back. And I think that would be interesting to see Connolly there. Because actually, if you look at the way Husband distributes the ball, Husband's comfortable on the ball, but his distribution for a centre half is that kind of ball. Very often, it's that sort of knock into the channel or that knock into sort of the percentage position, and you can do that as a centre half, but as a central midfielder, no, it's not. It's not enough. And I agree with you. I thought he looked like a League One midfielder.
Yeah, it was strange, very strange seeing him start in that position. I would like to see him in his sort of preferred and best position. So, yeah, as Daz McKenzie said, give the lad a chance.
Which is a
games.
fair shout.
Yeah, I think he does.
Just not in midfield.
Yeah.
I think, and that, to be fair, that was the point I was going to make. I was jesting when we all spoke across each other about with the League One leggy donkey, which was your Williams expression. But the reality is that Connolly, if he's going to play in the Championship, he's not going to play in midfield. And we've got an international sat on the bench who I'm sure would have done a better job, notwithstanding any jet lag. And I know we've got West Brom tomorrow, and that perhaps Critchley had that in mind when he decided to bench him. But these games, I think where you can, you've got to try and play. If Stuart had been there, I think it would have been an automatic shoe-in, wouldn't he? And I agree also as well. I think that I don't think Sterling. I think actually Sterling might have done a better job in the defensive midfield role than Connolly, and put Connolly in the right back. Yeah. And then look at Grettison. And think, right, what's Grettison got to do to get a game? And so we have actually got, to a certain degree, like an abundance of riches at the back there, haven't we? And But I think I actually did think it was quite strange bringing Sterling into that right centre back spot when you've got a centre back, then you've pushed into midfield, and you've got another centre back on the bench.
So if you'd have just done that, Critch would have won the game.
Listen, I'm not.
Should have given him that new contract. Simon, what were you thinking?
I've got to say, I'm not looking at Critchley and saying you've picked the wrong team. All I'm saying is I do think that Connolly would have done a better job in that back three than Sterling did. And I think what do you think, Sean? Do you think Sterling could have done a job centre mid, or do you think that's sort of slightly beyond him?
I get what you're saying, because he's more combative, isn't he? And I think he's more aggressive in that fashion. I think Connolly's perhaps a bit more standoffish in defensive mid, and sometimes you need a runner in there, the sort of a destroyer in the defensive mid, to be able to retain possession. But I think ultimately in centre mid we were just missing a playmaker. Yeah. And that's what, because at the end of the day, I'll get them in, early doors. But Swansea only had 0.19 XG, which is the lowest figure of any team in the Championship this weekend. We had
higher XG, Sean, didn't we? We had higher XG.
Yeah, we had 0.49, which I mean is nowhere near good enough to win a game of football at the end of the day.
But got 3 points.
Yeah, and that's nowhere near good enough to win a game of football, and it kind of shows that the game was pretty stagnant and we were just playing it in the midfield. But I think that's probably I fail to see how they've had a lower figure than that this season at home on their own turf. So as much as we kind of can nitpick the defensive aspects, we were completely sound there, really.
Sean, all I can say is, as much as John jests with you about your conversion to Medine, I think you're converting him to the power of the stats, because he started reading them. He confessed on the way home last night. He said, "I started looking at those XG."
No, I didn't. No.
You did.
Well, I've got to admit, I've looked at the heat maps for this game, which is heat maps are my sworn enemy. But I found myself looking at them, so we'll talk about those later.
Obviously, we didn't do very, very well the XS metric, did we? Because Big Gaz wasn't on the pitch. So that's one of the old X metrics.
Jimmy had a good go.
Yeah.
Jimmy had a good go with it. My particular favourite was, I don't know how well you saw this, but when on that penalty shout, his little wave that was just the calmest no. This kind of little wave.
Yeah, then he kind of looked away, didn't he? He looked away.
The lad whose ankle he'd crunched, they knocked it round. Then eventually it was Jimmy who knocked it out of play, just with a go on then. I broke his ankle, I'll knock it out of play. And he just had this look, oh, bloody hell, forget it.
I play a bit of poker every now and then, and a tell you can look out for people is if they're bluffing, they look away as if to say, oh no, if they've got a good hand, they'll look away. So, I'm not really interested, So yeah, I saw Jimmy Husband doing that to kind of deflect the attention. But yeah, it was we got away with that one anyway. So Sean, 65 minutes. Tim and I were crying out for change. We weren't doing a lot, but we were containing them quite well. But we didn't have much attacking flair or verve, did we? And I think it was the right time to make an introduction and a change with, who was it? Bowler coming on 66 minutes for Mitchell. And then he did inject a bit of much needed urgency in the forward line, I thought.
Yeah, I must say that, because we were having this chat, me and Mitch, and I was kind of like resigned to the fact, yes, we need Medine now, because we're just not getting the ball at the park if we want to get something here. But Bowler obviously injects that direct running pace. But I think the more important change was when we switched Keshi centrally and brought in Dale, because that Keshi is the playmaker in the central midfield area that's able to link the play together. And he was playing in actual central midfield position as well, which is different for him. We kind of just slotted him in there and put some attacking players on. So that's where we really got going and playing the way that initially I would like us to play long term. And I think we're good enough to play long term when we have those sort of players in midfield. We are good enough to link the play through the thirds. We are good enough to create these chances that way. And I think that was the difference, really, because I think ultimately if Keshi had stayed out wide on the left and we did lacked still a central midfielder that can link the play together, I think we wouldn't have scored, or we wouldn't have created anything, really. I don't think, because we really struggled to get in behind them. And like I say, if it wasn't for that, I think I would have been calling out for a target man. But obviously, Lavery, like we'll come on to, he can, for such a little guy, He's so good at holding up the ball. He's so good at bringing others into play. He's the ultimate complete forward. He is Yates and Medine combined at this rate. And that's where the difference is, where perhaps you don't need a target man because you've got a player that can do two jobs in the form of one striker.
Chip. That's the chipping away still. Tim,
Once we've got a centre mid, you'll never see him again. Ever again.
I'm not having Shane Lavery as good a target man as Shane Lavery,
No,
Sean, but almost.
Yeah,
I know
not
what you're saying.
Shane Lavery.
He can. He's got that attribute in his locker. GTF was also like that, very good at holding it up. Tim, Shane Lavery made a big difference when he came on, didn't we? I think anyone who was at the game just saw. So I don't think you can see it on TV, but there's just the change in mentality. They were scared, weren't they?
Yeah, I think going back to Jezza first of all, I think he seemed to get very frustrated with the fact that he wasn't getting a lot of he wasn't getting much decent balls. I felt a bit sorry for him really, because I think the number of times he made a run and the ball wasn't quick enough or whatever, and he kept straying offside. And I think introducing Lavery just took us to a different dimension. Really, I think he, he's more aggressive. He's got pace. He's proven over the course of the season so far that when he gets goal side, that he's a real threat. And I think he's our number one striker. And it seems an age since he played, and yet when he came on for his little cameo, it was like he'd never been away, wasn't it? All of a sudden we've got that extra threat that perhaps we haven't always shown. And listen, Yates and Medine have the roles. They hold up. Particularly Yates closes down quite well, but I think Lavery does closes down quite well, but holds the ball better. He's probably got more consistent when he gets through on goal. And if you're a defender, who do you want to play against? Of those three, I would say the least you'd want to play against is Lavery, just because I think he would drive you mental for the game as a defender, because you're never going to be able to switch off. So in that respect, I do agree with Sean. I think he probably mixes the attributes of the other two and brings something else to the party as well. So be interesting to see whether he starts him on tomorrow night, won't it? Because I think he might as well, because I think he was probably fit just before the international break, but he's been held back. So
okay, moving on to goal. Mitch, let's come to you. As I mentioned to Sean, Josh Bowler did make a difference to our attacking play, added a bit of zip and a bit of urgency, and he went on one of these mazy runs as he does, gets a corner. And talk us through a bit more of finesse from you-know-who.
Yeah, I mean, just before I go to finesse, I thought Bowler actually, it was quite a nice shot that he had that got turned out for a corner. But no, that was earlier, wasn't it? The shot got turned out for a corner. It got sort of stabbed out for a corner. I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, the corner came in. It was nodded away. Keshi just took it beautifully on his chest, hit it on the volley. And it was another one of those, as all his goals seem to be, where you're not quite sure if he's mishit it or it's a work of absolute genius, because he kind of just hooks it. He called it, didn't he? He called it a hook on his post-match interview. He kind of just hooks it into like there's about a cat flap size space for the ball to go through into the corner, and he curls it exactly into that cat flap size space. And again, it was he's either just pulling out these genius finishes week after week, or he's on the streak of his life in terms of luck. But whichever it is, I hope it continues, because it was a lovely goal and much needed.
He definitely meant it for me. I think.
Yeah, I think
you look at the way I initially thought, same as you, kind of. I thought he'd just mishit it, and it just happened to go away from the crowd of bodies. But such a tight space to do that, and the way that he's connected with it, and it's kind of curled back into the corner as the way he shot it. And I just think that he's just class. And for anyone who ever doubted Keshi Anderson, I tell you now, he is an absolute genius. I love him. He's just such a special player to have.
and he's a great personality as well, isn't he? And Tim, one thing I noticed when he took it on the chest, the ball, it was a really awkward height. It wasn't the ball was not in front of him, which is always more difficult, and he's contorted his body because the ball's right on him. Just to get the shot away from that kind of angle, it's a sign of great technique, isn't it? And I think he's just gone for accuracy, and he's gone to coin a phrase from your family, hit the target, and that's exactly what he's done.
And I think that's what he does, doesn't he? In the different scenarios we've spoken about, where there've been quite unusual chances in some way, the focus has always been hitting that target, and as my brother used to, scream at players when they didn't. He's got the best technique since GTF was here. That's without a shadow of a doubt. I think as a footballer to watch, the way he can back heel it, he can play players in that way. He can take a cushion pass down from, as he did at Sheffield, from 40, 50 yards and just kill it. And he's part of the DNA of the way we play at the moment, I think, and I think he's a very, very important player for the squad.
I think I was just going to say as well, sorry, on Keshi, I'll bring in the expected goals again. The Sheffield United one was 0.14, so that's essentially a 1 in 10 chance that a player scores from that position. This one here at Swansea was 0.11, the same again.
Wow.
It's a player in League One called Scott Twine, who plays for MK Dons, who essentially breaks the expected goals metric year upon year, because he's just a player that is better at shooting from strange angles and from further out than normal. And Keshi's quickly becoming one of those players where he can pull something out of nothing on a regular occurrence now. So it's great to have a player like that when you're in tight games like this. He's going to be absolutely pivotal to everything we do the back end of the season.
I didn't think we were going to score, and unfortunately, I've done my first Smith of the season, Tim, haven't I? I was bursting for a piss in the second half. I've got to go. Under the stands.
I was chuckling to myself. You've travelled 6 hours down to watch a game of football, and your inability to control your bladder denied you the satisfaction of seeing that ball at the back of the net.
Although there's sometimes it's kind of taking one for the team in that situation. Right, I'll go downstairs and I'll go for a piss. It'll change the game, and it did. So I think we've got me to thank for it. No. But under the stands, just as you're about to go up, as I was about to go up, you hear that roar, and at first you think, "Shit, is that them or us?" And I realised it was a roar, but not like kind of massive one. So I was like, "Yes, it's us," but then, shit, it's us. I've missed the goal. So it's kind of a bittersweet moment. But another kind of sweet moment was the bet that I did, Tim, wasn't it? £2 on Keshi to score the last goal at 14-1.
You were the bookie killer of the weekend, weren't you?
So our degenerate gambling has been paying dividends, hasn't it? The last couple of games.
Unfortunately, I was slightly off form on. I was a little bit like Conley, sort of not quite at the races. So
you were a leggy League One gambler at the weekend.
Exactly. But I think we had this little bit of a funny instance after that, didn't we? Because the few of the Blackpool the youth sort of did their usual and sort of ran over towards the because we were quite close to the divide between the home and away fans. Not that there was a particularly lot of the away fans were directly against us; they were all at the other side. And then we had this rather strange. I was going to say standoff then, but it wasn't standoff really, was it? It was like it. There was more.
I've still got the bruises to.
So just to put it in context, obviously we were quite close to the divide. So as you know, a few of the young lads, exuberant, run over, doing the usual, no doubt, flicking the V's.
Just doing what football fans do to fans
winding the opposition,
flicking the V's, toss of signs,
and we end up, and it was only after the sort of the initial celebrations come down, and John's coming back up the stairs, and all of a sudden we see about 6-7 stewards grabbing hold of this lad. I had no idea what he'd done. And then his mates tried to grab him back, and we end up with a complete and utter battle in the seats because the stewards don't give up, and they all come. More of them come steaming in, and we've got young kids. In case John's lad Eddie was there, and it was quite a frightening experience. I've not seen anything like that in a stadium since West Ham in 2012, and it was. I mean, we both had a real go at the stewards, didn't we? Just saying, like, where is, you're there to protect the health and safety of the people in the stadium, and you've basically caused a mini riot because you've come in there overly aggressively, and you haven't had any thought other than to grab this lad. If that lad does something wrong, you spot him, you go and stand on every exit to the ground, and you get him on the way out. You don't go in mob-handed. And there was people flying back over seats. Me and Elliot, I was with my lad. We had to basically dive out of the way because two or three lads came flying down 2 or 3 things.
I know. I nearly went over. I was very close to going over.
Your son was in. It was he welled up, didn't he? He was clearly frightened, and he wasn't the only one. There's young girls knocking. Say young, like teenage girls who were with the boyfriends or whatever. It was all. It was a very unpleasant experience, and there's only one set of people seemed to cause that, and that was the stewards and the police. I'm not talking about the
police
Blackpool.
were doing nothing.
They were on the phones. They were on the
phones, messing about. They were watching. There was 8 or 9 of them at the front watching this all happen, and it was like it was a brawl, wasn't it? It was like us versus them, and they were just stood there watching. And we had to self-police it, didn't we?
Yeah.
As us Blackpool fans, it was good because we all stopped them kicking the shit out of this young lad. But what was he, 15, 16?
Yeah, it was only a
They were
kid.
really aggressively going for him.
That's why they were going for him, because he was 15, 16. That's how.
Yeah.
Most
They just got on a power trip, and apparently I spoke to Smarty, who's one of the Blackpool police at the end, and they said they'd had a word with them and they did back off, but they didn't back off anywhere near quickly enough for me. And I had a word with quite a few of them on the way out, but there was actually almost a mirror situation in the home end.
I saw that at the end. I was going to say, I saw it on TV and I had a look on Twitter about it. I think someone had a Union Jack with like a loyalist message on it, so they were scrapping, because obviously Swansea fans are quite pro-Welsh. And then apparently, become in recent games, or not mainly in recent games, but because they have, the away fans always sing "God Save the Queen" and whatever. Some of the more English Anglophile fans bring a Union Jack, but this one
there was a Northern Ireland flag. I'm sure there was an Ulster flag.
It was, but the stewards ended up steaming in there as well, And it looks like whatever it was seemed to get blown out of proportion because the stewards had gone flying in. So, to be honest, the experience outside the stadium was completely opposite. The experience outside the stadium, they were fine.
Saw it on the telly, didn't we?
You could see on the stream, Tim. It was so obvious. I mean, I obviously I only watched the match replay on Tangerine TV, but had I been watching a blocky stream, you could see there must have. I was like, what's going on there? It was like 30, 40 stewards going up the steps, which was it looked like there was something really serious going on. And then when you kind of read afterwards that it's a bit of a kerfuffle about a flag, it seems ridiculous. Obviously, we didn't see what was going on in the Blackpool end because the camera couldn't show it. But
it was literally just as it died down, wasn't it, Tim? It was just as ours had died down, and it kicks off over there.
And the police ended up having to intervene in that one as well. But you could see all the stewards going rushing into this area. And
that's what makes the scene, isn't it? It's when once you because I was none the wiser that something was going on in the Swansea end until just a group of high-vis jackets come charging down in this area, and then the entirety of that stand, you can see them all watching what's going on. So it causes a flashpoint unnecessarily, doesn't it?
So it left a little bit of a bitter taste, and it was completely unnecessary because there was, I can say 100% nothing was thrown. There was no flair. Whatever he did, that lad, was in the context of inside a football ground was not unusual. Now, I heard a suggestion that somebody swung a punch, not connected, but now whether that happened and at what point, or whether that's just the stewards trying to justify it afterwards, I have no idea. All I can say is we go from an exuberant celebration of an equaliser to absolute mayhem in about 30 seconds. And it was a very surreal experience and a very unpleasant experience.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Obviously, you were saying Eddie was welling up. I kind of hedge my bets that it was actually John welling up and Eddie was there swinging digs, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I've taught him well, Sean. Terrible as it was all up. There was a bit of excitement at the end, Tim. But joking aside, they were just complete and utter wankers. Their stewards, and I felt quite justified going in each one of their faces down afterwards. I went, "Fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," to every single one of them right in the face.
He did.
I said, "Enjoy your £12.50, you fucking wankers," and they were just. Anyway. We got a point, and these were the scenes coming out of the game. It was all good anyway. It was all forgotten in the end, but yeah, didn't really want to see that kind of stuff. Player ratings running an hour already. Doesn't time fly when you're talking crap. Not Chris Maxwell. I'm talking crap already. Dan Grimshaw, Tim. Start with you. Didn't really have a lot to do, did he?
I'm trying to think. No, he didn't. I think he's. I mean, you can tell on the training ground they do this thing where Grimshaw gets the ball and it goes out to the centre back, and then out to left or right full back, and they must have done that about 20 times in the game, and very effectively, I've got to say. So I think the biggest positive I can say about Dan's performance is he's so comfortable in possession. And I think I said this. I almost feel like a bit deja vu because I think I said it the last game in that, where he's probably not got the distance Maxwell's got. I think he's more accurate with his passing, and I don't think he could have done anything with the goal. I think it's just one of them. It's a worldie. 8 out of 10. I think it's probably fair.
You're not using the FPRS system, no? Do you not
with it. Not well. I did have, but I've just not added a plus or a minus. It's.
Someone came up to me at the game and was referencing the FPRS system, which I thought was quite amusing.
It's now it's part of folklore, isn't it?
Yeah.
On a big shout out for Simon and his son Hayden. By the way, we had a couple of beers with, didn't we? And who's a regular. I'm sure if he's not listening to, I don't think he listens to it live. I think he tends to listen to it back afterwards.
In his van. Yeah.
In his van, but yeah. So very, very nice to meet them, and very strange links to Blackpool, which all down to his family taking him on holiday to Blackpool when he was a kid, and that's why he's a Blackpool fan. Born
and raised in Leicester, lives in Leicester, and he's a massive Pool fan. Yeah, it's good to hear that, isn't it?
And his son is now as well. So it's good to hear these stories sometimes, isn't it? With people who haven't quite got that same location connection as to how they actually come to support them. I know Steve Rowland has got no connection to Blackpool, and I think it's along the similar lines. I think he was attracted to the kit or whatever it was. I can't remember. He has told me the story in the past, and despite living down south, became a Blackpool fan and retired to Blackpool to live here. It's not always where you're born, is it? And it can be a very, very sometimes quite a random. I said to Hayden, his son, so basically you're a Blackpool fan because your dad went to Blackpool for a few holidays when he was a kid, and he said, yeah, and he is, but he's passionate, which is fantastic.
Or Ada, as I unfortunately call him. I didn't hear his name right. His dad told me his name so what's your name, mate? And so it was quite heavy. It's got sort of Leicester accent. And I said, Ada. No, Ada.
You had to turn up your hearing aid, John.
Wearing these for too long. Right, Jordan Gabriel, Mitch.
Yeah, he did okay. He didn't. I don't remember him doing anything wrong. He got forward a little bit. He didn't get forward as effectively as Tim's pointed out as he normally does. But then I don't know if anybody really got forward as effectively as they normally do. So I will go for a 8- for Gabriel.
Dujon, Sterling, Sean.
Like we were saying before, he's probably not best suited to that position. So I always kind of give a bit of a positive on that note in terms of rating, sort of let him off a bit. But at the end of the day, like I said before, he essentially, through him, we didn't concede any chances through Dujon Sterling doing anything wrong. perhaps he could have been better with his distribution, but I think that's just the pressure that we were under. And I think sometimes, as much as obviously Tim was saying about Dan Grimshaw's accuracy, I think he's accurate, but because of the pace at which he initially sort of sends the ball out, it's almost we invite pressure on ourselves from his passes. Whereas with Maxwell, his best attribute is sort of playing out quickly. As much as he's not as accurate, he's good at getting the ball out quickly and sort of beating the press before they're able to set back up. I think Grimshaw is a little bit slower in that regard. And when he's playing it out to Sterling, then he's got more pressure on him to make a pass. And we were struggling with that because I think if we'd have had a better midfielder in there, Sterling would have done a better job on the ball. But to me, he didn't do much wrong. So 7+.
He did a sterling job in that out of position. Big Marv, Tim.
Yeah, I think he was his sort of normal, reliable self. I think there was a couple of incidents. It's always very difficult. I think I should normally I would try and watch the game back on Sunday, but obviously I spent.
That's the same. It's like you didn't really take it in for some reason this game.
Yeah.
You know what you mean?
So, but in the first half, I remember a few occasions where his pace really was what stood out to me. How he was able to do a recovery run.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
You'll learn about this on your junior team managers course, John. Recovery runs.
No, I've just been the only thing I've been teaching him is just to hit it long and get stuck in. That's enough, isn't it?
Yeah.
Close them down.
You just need a big 6 footer up front. Just find the biggest lad who's under 10 and stick him up front. But yeah. So I think he was quietly effective, but I don't. I'm being harsh in saying an 8. I think probably 8's about.
I think that first half tackle was immense. Like that was superb, and he was really under pressure there in the recovery run. I was going to say actually, with you were mentioning about recovery runs. I interviewed his old manager for non-league for a piece for Lancs Live that will be coming out soon.
Sean, you're not wearing your Lancs Live sponsored hoodie yet.
I've got the two screens in the background with Lancs Live on. Yeah.
What a scrolling banner.
Yeah. But he said that his recovery runs were what made him sign him. He said his recovery pace and his recovery ability is why he's getting where he is. And I spoke to a Leyton Orient fan and he said exactly the same, that it's all about his recovery and that's what really helps him to become the player that he is. And I completely agree. That tackle essentially summed him up in the first half of why he's so important.
Should I use the scoring system to push him up to an 8+?
Yeah,
then?
let's get him
I think you need to implement the FPRS system here, Tim.
Yeah. 8+.
I think it's going to be hard to pick out a man of the match from this team. I think he's right up there, isn't he? He's going to be a contender. James' husband, Mitch, got away with one of his areas of game that we thought he'd kicked out.
He did, but
it's still there. But yeah,
I thought otherwise he had a really good game. I really did. I thought he was pretty dominant in the air, which is something that you worry about him with when he's more central. I think he made the most tackles in the game by some distance. He certainly made the most clearances in the game by a long shot. And
if this was Gary Medine, you wouldn't be speculating on these stats. You'd know them.
Well, I'm just suggesting it like I don't know them. I think we both know that I do know them.
How was your Saturday night actually with no Medine stats to lock up? You must have been.
Well, I've got a stat for later. I've got a stat for later about the absence of Gary, so we'll save that for a little while. But yeah, I mean, but without looking at the stats, I thought Jimmy played well. That penalty aside, and he didn't concede it; he got away with it. So his shithousery was paid off. Yep. I'm going to give him a 9. I thought it was the pick of the defenders. To be honest, I thought it was excellent.
The absence of Gary, that could be a BBC Two Sunday evening drama series.
Played for today, they scored, didn't they?
It sounds like some kind of, I don't know, mid to late 1980s album title by somebody. The absence of Gary.
Reece James, sure.
Yeah, he was good. Yeah, exactly. Set piece delivery is something we struggle on, especially from left backs this season. And he obviously provided the moment that we needed. And he did a good job because he had Ethan Laird. Ethan Laird was going into the game. Ethan Laird was the player alongside Olivier and Chadwell. I was like, those will be the difference makers today if we're going to lose the game. And Ethan Laird probably had his quietest game all season, and that was down to James's positional sense. I think he kind of highlighted that he is actually a really good defender at that left back, and his positional sense especially is really good. And he's quite a balanced, because you think you have a wing back who can't necessarily defend as well. You have a full back that can defend really well but isn't as progressive going forward. I think Reece James is a nice balance between the two, and I think he really kind of showed that. So I'd say an 8 because obviously he's provided the moment as well. In fact, even 8+ because he's done nothing wrong there. And to say that he's coming to the side quite late and everyone had kind of just expected him to kind of wilt away with the rest in the rotation of the sub bench and stuff. So yeah, an 8+.
I think it's good to see him actually
In
playing in his correct position. Yeah, like it was.
It shows, doesn't it?
lost.
Because obviously
Yeah,
we said that with Connolly in centre mid, and obviously James was the one that was getting the grief for his performances in centre mid. It just shows, doesn't it? When you got played in your natural position, then you become the player that you're supposed to be.
You're not Doncaster's greatest player of the season for nothing.
I think Garbutt. I think if depending on how we're setting up, and if Husband isn't playing at left back, I think James is probably sneaking ahead of Garbutt at the moment. For me, I think he's more consistent. He's a better defender, that's for certain.
Yeah, I think,
and he's got a bit of delivery on him as well.
Yeah, Garbutt's a bit suspect at the back at times. Yeah, be interesting to see what happens if that place is up for grabs. Right, Ryan Wenzelton.
Yeah, I mean, he's missing his yin to his yang, wasn't he, on Saturday? But I still thought he had a quietly effective game. Listen, because I haven't watched it back, my recollection is he puts that fantastic free kick in that. It was him. Tell me it was him before I look a complete idiot. Where we had about 3 goes at scoring in the first half. It was an absolute peach of a free kick, and how we didn't score from that is still beyond me, because literally only one of them to have anticipated it of the 3, and we would have scored because it was quality. So I think he did well. I don't think he was exceptional, but I think he was very, very competent. And listen, I factor in the fact that Swansea's midfielder are a playmaking side, and we stopped them, and we stopped them very, very effectively. I think I'm going to go 9- because I think he's probably And I'm hampered by the fact I've not watched it back, but I think he's actually had a very effective game on a quiet, a little bit like Dougal does sometimes, on a relatively unassuming basis. But I think he's brilliant. But if we've kept Swansea's possession down to the chances they've had, I think a lot of it will be down to the way that we've dealt with the midfield. And that free kick was exceptional.
Hard to argue with that, Tim. Callum Connolly, Mitch.
Well, we've talked about him at length, haven't we? And we've talked about sort of what he lacked. I mean, he worked hard. He ran around. He put some tackles in, and he was there. So we can't be too harsh on him. What's the lowest we've given so far? Was it a 7 for? Did you give 7+ for Dougal?
7+ for Stilling, yeah.
Well, I'll go with 7 for Connolly. I feel like 7- instinctively, but I feel like that might be a bit harsh on him. 7.
Fair enough. Dimmy Mitchell, Sean. I didn't really notice he was playing that much in this game.
No, I gave the wingers a pass, to be honest, in the first hour, because the way we'd set up to play was almost a halfway house of neither system on the ball, because I think we were relatively poor on the ball for the majority of the game until Keshi was moved centrally. So you we're playing direct balls to Jerry. Jerry doesn't have the ability to hold it up. So how are you going to bring Mitchell into play? And obviously Gabriel's being hemmed by the left wing back of Swansea. So how is he going to get the ball to Mitchell? We're not playing a ball through midfield, so how are we going to get the ball to Mitchell? So he just kind of did a lot of nothing, but from pressing off the ball, pushing their centre halves under pressure, he did force a couple of turnovers in dangerous positions. So I'd say a 7 plus, really, because it's not on him. The reason that he wasn't as effective, I think it's kind of a bit of a pass for him for me.
Mr. Finesse himself, Keshi Anderson, Tim.
Yeah, I mean he's pulled us out of the proverbial, hasn't he, with the equaliser? Because I must admit before that went, and I didn't really think we were going to score. I didn't feel that we. I think we were saying it. Neither did you, because you decided that it was an appropriate time to go and relieve yourself. But yeah, I think he's, as I said before, he's from the point of view of his technical ability, he's the best we've seen since GTF, and I enjoy watching him play, and I love that attitude that he's got. 8+, I think.
He nearly scored again, of course, as well. It got cleared off the line, didn't it, right at the end? And
he did well. Carbon copy, wasn't it?
He did well. Another one of technically, the best thing for him to do was to hit it into the ground so that it came up, and it was harder for the defender to get rid of. So he did well in that regard again. But it was just a good clearance.
And he made that corner as well. That was the one I was thinking was the goal. It wasn't. He had a lovely run through the midfield where he just sort of went past about 4 or 5 people in midfield, and then somebody just got a toe on it and stabbed it out of play, which was set up that corner. He seemed to really explode after his goal into life, and it was like, I think you said it was when he'd come into the middle, and it was quite interesting. I think we've only seen him in the middle in a central midfield role twice. One was at Millwall, where he was really good, I thought. And I've said before, and I seem to say it every week, I wasn't so sure about Kesh, but I really wasn't so sure that Kesh could play central midfield. But maybe he can in that formation, in that 4-5-1, and maybe that gives us an option for, combining the solidity of that 4-5-1, but retaining the attacking aggression in it. Sorry, I digress.
Have I been harsh with an 8+?
I'd say give him a 9.
Yeah,
I'd
I would
say
say.
9, yeah.
I mean, Mick Seven's giving me a little, not grief, but he's suggesting I've been a bit hard. And listen, I'm conscious of the fact that it's quite difficult when you're behind the goal sometimes, I think, and particularly when all
you're fighting with stewards. When you're fighting with stewards.
Yeah, when I was too busy. When I was too busy, stood on my chair on my seat, gesticulating to the away fans.
If I was a Swansea fan, I'd be sat right next to there was hardly any Swansea fans there, was there? They've got the option to sit right next to us, and you have a bit of banter and give them a bit of grief. Yeah.
Anyway, and we had the good fortune to meet the iconic young lad who did the single finger thing at Preston, didn't we? At the game. So I nearly got his autograph. That's a quote.
Kelly, if you're watching, you've made him famous.
Yeah.
So we'll give him a 9. I've upgraded it.
Yeah.
On the basis of it's been. It's
4
like,
points
it's like when the invigilators come in, isn't it? And they just check the marking to make sure that it's.
The independent adjudicator, Mick Seven, has come in and said, "Hang on a minute, Tim, bump that
moderator."
The good thing is we're all open to have our views changed. Sean's been very magnanimous in relation to his reassessment of Medin's contribution, and you've seen the power of the XG stats. So
yeah.
It's good to have such open-minded podcasters.
Fluid mindset. Right, finally, Jerry Yates, Mitch.
Yeah, so this is where my stats come in. In the absence of Gary, obviously, I monitor what the people who aren't Gary.
That's the follow-up series, in the absence of Gary.
Yeah. I always monitor what people who aren't Gary do in Gary's shirt. And unfortunately, Jezza didn't have the greatest day of his life, I don't think. He won 0 headers and touched the ball 12 times in 70 minutes, which is kind of tells its own story. And actually looking at the heat map is really interesting. And I really, heat maps I don't find very interesting, but this one was quite interesting in that ours looks just like theirs. It's a kind of blob, and amazingly tells you that some people are on a football pitch, but there's a big hole in ours right where the forwards should be. which kind of tells its story about the game. I don't think that was all Jerry's fault, and we've been through that in some depth. We really struggled to thread the ball. We didn't really have the player to play the ball to him, but he just had one of those frustrating afternoons where he'd come deep, he'd get it, and it'd sort of bounce off him, and he never really got it down. He's a lovely player when he runs at people, but he never really got it down to run with. I think his problem is that when he plays up front on his own, he just doesn't have the physical presence. Lavery has that bullish sort of ability to shoulder charge people out the way and to kind of herring going in. He's all elbows and sharp angles. Medin's obviously really good at getting his backside into people and bringing the ball down and win it. And Jerry just looks like he if he's not getting the right balls, it's not going to work for him. So I felt a bit sorry for him. Seven minus because I love him and I can't give him a 6.
I was going to say, I think if we sign a good number 8 in January in centre mid, I think that Jerry could play that lone role, because I think the way we play will change significantly, to be honest, if we get one in. So it will be interesting to see because I'd still believe he could play that role, but at the moment he's no chance. The way that we want to play, you're just not over this Christmas period. He's just not going to be that player. Not in these types of games anyway.
He
in
couldn't
the other games,
play that role in League One with when we had like MJ Williams in midfield and stuff, and he couldn't play that role then against League One defences. I'm not surprised he can't play it now. We've seen plenty of evidence that when we're pinging it and playing it well, he's a superb player, and I absolutely love him to bits, and I'm not writing him off, but he really made no impression on that game at all. I think he had one shot, to be fair to him. He had one shot where he had a little run from about 25 yards out and just put it into the keeper's hands. It wasn't really dangerous, but he did nothing apart from that. So yeah, 7 minus, because I can't give Jerry a 6.
No. Okay, let's move on to man of the match. So let's start with you, Sean.
James Husband for me. I think he was. That's where I think the difference lies with him playing in a back 4 at centre half and a back 3 at centre half, because he's able to be a bit more aggressive. He doesn't really have the license to do that in a back 4. I think that he has to be a bit more clever with the way that he plays. And obviously, I mean, if he gives away the penalty and the referee actually gives it, then perhaps this is a different view. But he was pretty spot on really most of the game. And I think that, like I say, if you look at their goal in particular, he does what you want Connolly to do. His positional sense is correct, whereas Connolly's kind of showing him inside. So, and I think he led us well and he distributed the ball well. So I think James Husband probably for me, man of the match.
Tim?
Well, I was going to say Wintle, but bearing in mind the fact that the invigilators have intervened and remarked my paper, I'm going to go with Keshi, because I gave him a 9, and I think the power of the panel's persuasive arguments as to his contribution, particularly in the last 15 minutes, have won the day.
I'm going to agree as well. Keshi for me, match winner or point winner even, and he's also won me 28 quid. So cheers, Keshi. Mitch.
Well, I'm really split on it, but I'm going to go with Hubby, because I thought that Keshi had a really good, maybe 20, 25-minute spell where he played really well, but Husband had a penalty shout aside, a really good 90 minutes and was consistently excellent. So I'm really split on it. I could give it to either of them, so that it's 2-2.
I'll give it Keshi because I love him. So there you go.
I also love him as well.
Yeah.
Can we have a new score anyway, by the way, because we need a man of the weekend. We went to the Gower Peninsula on Sunday morning and it was freezing. And one of the 4 of us, I don't know, it's not me, decided to go for a dip in the sea.
Oof. So
I'm going to give John 10 out of 10 for bravery beyond the call of duty. In fact, I think you should we'll have to pin a medal on your next pod.
I'm right. Go me.
If you want to see it, day. you go on my Facebook page, and there's a picture of him running into the sea, and another one with him actually going full in. So every credit, because it was bloody freezing.
I thought you were going to say there's another one of him running straight out again.
I like
That was-
on you see that on like 70s comedy films, don't you? Yes, it was a glorious sunny day, and I was ridiculously hungover, and I'd brought my shorts for a paddle, and I had a towel as well. And I said to my nephew, "You should go for a swim." And he went in, came straight back out. But yeah, I went for it. But yeah, it was good.
It
Though,
was a
wasn't
long
it?
run. It was a long run to get into so
Yeah.
we could actually dive in with it. But so it went on. I had to do about 3 videos before we actually did it because it went on so long. But I've got to say, if you're anyone's ever down there, go onto the Gower Peninsula because the beaches there are something else. It really was quality. So it was a nice Sunday morning before we had the long turgid journey back.
6 hours back, but yeah, it was all worth it in the end, though. Tim, it was good day, great day. Okay, we've not done manager yet, we ain't got time, so let's very quickly move on to West Brom tomorrow. Sean, this is where I'm hoping you can come throw down some West Brom stats for us because there's not a lot I know about them apart from Matt Phillips still playing for them, and he plays for Scotland, funnily enough. Oh, the manager's
That's why
the manager's an unknown foreigner, isn't he? Who is he?
Yeah, so it's Valerian Ismail, who was the manager of Barnsley last season, got them into the playoffs. They play a very unique style of football, really. They're quite fast and direct. They're the most direct side in the league, but they also get the ball at the pitch the quickest. It's essentially a kick and rush game, but it's strange because most of the time when you have a team that's a really aggressive pressers, they're the most aggressive pressers in the league. You tend to see them playing expansive football, whereas West Brom don't even bother to try and play any form of balls through the midfield. They are straight direct. There's no messing about. You know exactly what you're getting with them. And I think that the thing with their fans, I think, is when they don't get a result, they have been a bit shaky recently, is they'll quickly turn on that style of football because there's nothing it is not fun to watch. It is real
Surprises
results.
me, actually. That surprises me.
It's really results based. They've obviously got some really good players. I mean, they've been fiddling around with a target man because obviously if they're playing that way, that style of football, then they're just wanting the ball forward. They played Matt Phillips in a false 9 role last game out in the loss to Huddersfield, but they've kind of been interchanging that, and then they play Carlin Grant off of Matt Phillips or off of another target man, and he's got 8 goals this season. They play 3-4-2-1, the same as Swansea. So I'm wondering if perhaps Critchley's mindset of changing to the 3-4-2-1 for Swansea will carry over into this game. But I think the difference is that I don't think we have to be as solid off the ball against West Brom as we were against Swansea, because the whole point of our system against Swansea was that you're blocking off these passing lanes, you're blocking off them controlling possession in the midfield. Whereas West Brom aren't even going to try and do that. They're going to bypass the midfield, which, to be honest, personally, I think that works into our hands. I think that we're quite happy to sweep up balls at the back. I think we're quite aggressive in the air. I think this would have been a perfect game for Richard Keogh, but he's obviously not fit. But I'm kind of struggling to pick which way we would go. I'm really struggling for even a system to play, because on one mind I'm like, well, I think we could potentially set up the same way as Swansea, but I think personally I would probably go 4-4-2, and I would play Lavery and Medine up top together, and I would take them on at their own game, because I think that we need physicality up top. They've got really good, solid defence. They've got the likes of Carl Bartley, Semi Ajayi, who are both big lads. But there's just no messing about with them. They're great. The issue for us will be set pieces, because they're really good from set pieces. That's where they've got quite a lot of goals, and obviously we've always been a little bit suspect from there. I think it could possibly be, if he's fit, a good chance to put Maxwell back into the lineup. Personally, I think that we need his quick distribution on the counter. I think that's something that will work for us. I think I would say 4-4-2. To be honest, would be the way that I can see us potentially setting up, because I think that it's not going to be a game that's played on the floor. It's not going to be a game that's played in the midfield. It won't be pretty to watch, but it'll be effective. And I mean, you look at the way that they're pressing out from the back, we're going to need a target man because they're so good at pressing. They've forced 5 goals this season from high turnovers from pressing, which is the highest in the league. So in terms of that kick and rush football, I think that, as we've said, our frailties perhaps is that we're missing a ball player in centre mid that'll thread it together. So we just need to have a target man up top. We need to be aggressive ourselves in that front. So I'd go 4-4-2. Brexit Brexit means Brexit. 4-4-2. You know, let's get big Gaz up top. But yeah, that's sort of the roundup on West Brom. They're not pretty, but I do fancy our chances, to be honest.
They are. They've dipped a bit, haven't they? In that there's now quite a bit of a gap between Fulham and Bournemouth and the rest, and basically West Brom are leading the chasing pack, aren't they? And I think there's about an 8-point difference of them around there now. So it's. I think they'll be quite disappointed to be where they are. I'm not saying they're out of it at this point in the season, but it's quite a significant gap that's developed, isn't it?
Oh, you're right. Yeah,
they have some good players. They have some really good players that can get something out of nothing. And I think, to be honest, Ismail has relied on that quite a lot quite recently, and their fans say similar. Their fans are very quick to. They had Tony Pulis before. They've had Sam Allardyce. They've had these types of managers. Whereas Ismail's system has more to it than that. It's more complex than that. But when you're not getting the results, it very quickly becomes a dour thing to watch. But they've got Callum Robinson, Grady Diangana. They've got players that should be in the Premier League ultimately. So they do have a lot of quality. But I do really fancy our chances. And we're probably going to dip to about 4-0 now, and I'm saying this. But I just think that we can match them physically. And I think that, personally, like I say, it's a good time to get Maxwell back in. It's a good time to sort of bring Medine and Lavery together, give Lavery a full match. And I fancy our chances, to be honest.
Medine and Lavery, Mitch, it's actually, joking aside, it's an exciting prospect, isn't it? It will complement each other beautifully, those two.
It's the bull and the wasp. I'm going to be horrible to play against.
Which is the third instalment, the third series in this BBC Two drama series. The Bull and the Wasp, the spin-off series. So, Sean, quick match prediction before we go, and we'll go around the room, predict score, and we'll head off after that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, sorry, Jake Livermore's suspended as well. He was like their pivotal sort of defensive midfielder.
Yeah, jolly good.
Holds everything together, so that's a good bonus as well. I'm going to go 2-0 to us. I think again, it's a game that kind of suited us defensively against Swansea. I think it suits us going forward on the ball against West Brom. So yeah, I fancy our chances, but we can't. Like if we try and play a passing game against West Brom the way that we were playing out against Swansea, we'll really struggle. So we just kind of need to go with what we know we can do best until over the Christmas period, which is just direct balls, getting people's faces, and try and control the play up the field.
Tim?
I think we might lose tomorrow night. And there may be a little bit reverse psychology in my match prediction, because obviously I'm hoping we don't, and I'm hoping that we're able to get that swagger back and to put them to the sword in the way that we should have put QPR to the sword, but for the ref. But personally, I think they might just have a little bit too much in the locker, and I think we are very vulnerable on set plays.
Which could play into
so I'm going 2-0 defeat.
Mitch?
I'll cheer us all up. I'm going for 2-1 win based on no sort of science. I think it'll be the reverse of the Blackburn game. I think we'll be dreadful in the first half. We should probably be 3-4-0 down at half time, but they'll only score once, and then we will come out and blow them away in the second half. And Gaza's going to get a goal based on the fact that he was sensational against them in the Cup. I know it's not exactly the same side that played, but I think I'm right in saying Ajayi was in the back line for them.
It was a better side that played us in the Cup than they've got now.
And he was absolutely sensational against them in the Cup last year. He had them on toast, and I think he's going to get a goal tomorrow, and somebody, probably Shane Lavery, will get another goal that will come off. It'll be Medine steaming in, it'll bounce around, and then it'll go in off like Lavery's ear or something, and we'll go insane. I will still be at home because I've got to isolate till Wednesday, so it's awful. But a Gary goal will go some way to making up for that.
You're gonna miss Big Gaz rising majestically like a mature salmon at the back post in front
He'll
of
have
the
his
South
stats
Stand.
prepped on the final whistle.
Gary,
he's got nothing better to do.
There'll be no one there to shout, "It's Medine! It's Medine! It's Medine!"
Southdown Block U will probably be somewhat relieved that I'm not going to be pointing the obvious out to them. It's a
I'm
great
saying that
range of
mentalist
decibels.
isn't here.
Yeah.
Mentalist isn't here.
The
Thank God for that.
Medine mentalist.
Yeah, quite. Well, no, I mean, as we know about Medine, he's a spiritual being. He's with us wherever we go.
I fancy us to win 2-1 as well. I'm going to agree with Mitch because we're Medine brethren. Right, everybody. Thanks ever so much for joining us this evening. It's been a God. Do you know? I thought we wouldn't have much to talk about because we've not seen much of the game, but yeah, over an hour and a half. So thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. This will be out in the audio pod soon. So if you want to catch up and have a listen on there. So all that remains to be said is thanks for watching. Thanks for downloading and up the pool.
Up the pool.
Oh.
Well,